Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Peter Lindstrom, Chair of the Environment Committee, and I will call the meeting to order. We do not have a quorum quite yet. We are expecting another member to join us shortly, but I think we can get started with at least our information items if without objection. My fellow council members here. We do have some things we need to vote on later this meeting, but we can get started with our first information item. If we could pull that. Welcome to the committee. An update on where we're at with our metro area water supply plan.
Thank you for.
Welcome.
My name is Lanya and I am an environmental analyst with the Water Policy Planning Group. And so I'm here to talk to you today about one piece of the water policy plan, which you've been working hard on, and that is the metro area water supply plan, which is going to be a component of that policy plan this time around. So we have an advisory committee, the chair of a metro area water supply advisory committee, Councilmember Wolf, who's very familiar with this content, so I would invite you to chime in and clarify, ask questions, highlight anything as we go through. We just wanted to familiarize the Environment Committee with what the content of this water supply plan will be, so that when it comes before you, you know what the purpose is, what information it contains, how it's going to inform local planning. So I'm just going to share some of that content with you. You will be seeing a draft, not today, but in the future with the water policy plan. So now you'll know what that is. That's my goal anyway. So a little bit about how this fits in, this water supply piece fits in with the bigger regional development guide and the water policy plan. Some of the stakeholder input, which has been a really robust piece of this work. So if you aren't familiar with that, I think it's useful to learn about who we engaged and what we've been hearing from them. Also just high level, what's the kind of information that you'll see, and then timeline and next steps so you have a sense of what the next ask of you will be. We share this figure a lot. I think it's helpful to kind of stay grounded in what we are working on and talking about today, but just recognizing that it is just one piece of the larger planning process. And to me, it's just always very important as staff to remember and recognize that what we are doing in our water authority and influence at the Met Council is part of the work that is helping to advance the regional goals that you as council members crafted and articulated for the region, and it's also representing and advancing those values, the vision for our region, as we are dealing with the existing conditions, the water quality, quantity issues that we have today, and what we see coming as emerging trends. So this is really important. The why of this document and why are we doing this work is part of that bigger framework. You are very familiar with the water policy plan, but for anybody who might want to refer to this later, I just wanted to set up the purpose of the policy plan is to set this framework. But what you might not be as familiar with, I've talked to the Environment Committee about this a little in the past, is that the water supply plan is a statutory responsibility as part of the Council's water supply planning responsibilities in statute. And so this plan is required and has some specific content in it. We are going to be including some guidance for local water supply systems and future regional investments. I do want to pause and say that while we're providing guidance, this is not a water supply regional system. Water supply is a local responsibility. We respect that, but I think that's always kind of a challenge. We operate the wastewater system, water supply is local, so just pause to make sure that's clear. And so this plan will reflect that. The plan does, it was first created in 2010, was updated in 2015, we're updating it again. All of those versions have very strongly emphasized water conservation, interjurisdictional cooperation, which is really showing up strongly in this new update, and long-term sustainability of our water supplies. There is also a responsibility to have this plan address reliability, security, cost effectiveness, very important, of the water supply for the region and its local and sub-regional components. So you'll see in the content how we're bringing that more local and sub-regional perspective into this. This plan is developed in cooperation with and subject to the approval of a Metropolitan Area Water Supply Advisory Committee with input from a technical advisory committee. This is a statutorily defined committee appointed by the governor, has a variety of representatives, utilities, local governments, state agencies who are going to be approving the water supply plan and then recommending that the Met Council adopt it as part of the water policy plan. So there's a couple of different roles coming into play here. So just to summarize what those different roles are between the Met Council, the Metro Area Water Supply Advisory Committee, MOSAC, and the Technical Advisory Committee, TAC. I did include this slide here, but really just pointing out that the Council will be approving the Regional Development Guide, the Water Policy Plan. MOSAC will have an approval role with the Water Supply Plan that connects to that. So that's all the why and kind of the what. What the content of the plan will include has been really heavily shaped by our advisory committees and our sub-regional stakeholders. And so the draft as it stands currently includes these kind of four main components. There's try to articulate very clearly what the desired outcomes for water supply in the region should be. Some regional commitments, so what are the region-wide actions, focus areas that will be helping us to achieve those outcomes. We have a strong request from our committee to follow progress. So can we create some dashboard measures, performance measures, to see if, are we making progress towards those outcomes with the commitments we're making? And then the kind of largest piece of this is now sub-regional chapters. So we have worked with 7 different sub-regions across the metro area on what their priorities are, what their interests are, and what they'd like to work on with the council related to water supply. And so that is a series of 7 chapters in this plan. So there's a lot of information in this. One of the questions that I have heard, and this, I don't have my glasses on, so I'm not seeing this very clearly. I think, I apologize if that is an issue for you as well, but something to refer back to later. One thing I've heard is how exactly do the Regional Development Guide, the Water Policy Plan, these kind of high-level statements we're making connect to this Metro Area Water Supply Plan, and then down into local plan updates and what the expectations of local plans and communities would be. So I just included this here as an example. All of this content is still draft and is changing, so I should have put a draft watermark across here. But it does, I think for me, it was a helpful example of how those regional goals that you crafted as council members connect down to our water policy plan objectives, and then policies or kind of specific commitments that the council and partners are making, regional actions, and then what does that look like for water supply specifically? So that's where we get into the Metro Area Water Supply Plan, both regional actions like we will advocate for funding for enhancing water conservation grant resources, but it will look differently. How that's implemented will look different in different parts of the region. So in the south, I have a couple different examples here, but like in the Dakota County Southeast, when we talk about water efficiency, there's a lot of conversation around agricultural irrigation. So wanting to reach out and partner with some of those agricultural partners to be efficient there. We have people in the core cities looking at working with water using industries in different ways. So you'll see that appear in these sub-regional chapters. But then, when we work together to update local water supply plans or local comprehensive plans, that's where we'll start to see these expectations. So local plan content for individual communities would include water conservation programs. They might be committing to developing conservation rebate programs supported by Met Council funding. So there's kind of this tie into local plans, programs, and content. That's my hope, is that you can kind of see how these parts fit together. If you have any questions about that or concerns about that structure, this is something, as we're continuing to draft content, that we can articulate further.
Any questions on that? I like it. It makes it really real when you see these possible action items and how they're tied into each goal. Councilmember Cedarburg.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to say that I was participating and listening in on a couple of the sub-regional water groups. And what I saw, so very effective, because the people in the neighboring communities got to see each other on multiple occasions to work for a common goal for their sub-region, where the water is more closely connected. And it made it easy for the people in the communities and the towns to get together, because the Met Council set the meeting up. And so I could tell that they had saved up a lot of issues and things to talk about for the meeting, because they were incredibly chatty with everybody at the meeting for the East one. And so it was a very effective way to get the towns and the communities talking, because there was a room, it was set up, it was a fixed time, and I was amazed at just like we have a common goal, we may have differences, but there were so many more things they agreed upon. And so, it wasn't just one meeting, it was multiple meetings. And you could just see the energy in the room by having these sub-regional groups. I mean, it was very, very effective.
That was one for the East Metro.
East Metro and the Northeast Metro, yep.
Okay.
So I didn't go to any other ones, but that was two.
Fantastic.
And that's one thing we did here, so thank you for calling that out and sharing that observation. One thing we did here was the value of the council in a convening role, and so that is one action that you'll see showing up in the draft Metro Area Water Supply Plan and in the Water Policy Plan as well. And as we start to think too about going down into what the local plan update expectations, process, technical assistance resources would be, we are thinking about how can we leverage those groups and that type of convening to help in the local plan update process and enhance some of that interjurisdictional cooperation and collaboration in their local planning as well. Stay tuned. So this structure and the content that we're developing has, so far the draft content has been informed by a wide variety of groups. We have been in touch with and connecting with the conversations that are going on in the Water Advisory Group. We really lean heavily and are very strongly guided by the Metro Area Water Supply Advisory Committees and the Technical Advisory Committees. They've been really core to kind of setting the stage and providing leadership to do a sub-regional engagement process and content. The sub-regional engagement that we've done so far, just to kind of give you a sense of who participated in, who we have names, who wrote down. I think there are some other people who participated as well, but we do have records for the dark green are cities who sent people to participate in these workshops to draft sub-regional content. The light green are counties that had people participating. On the blue maps, the dark blue are watersheds who we have noted participation, and the light blue are the county soil water conservation districts. Now there are some county staff who are participating in some other ways as well. And so this is just participants in our sub-regional workshop. So again, our other advisory committees give us coverage for other communities and counties. Overall, in addition to the advisory committees and the water advisory group, in the sub-regional engagement, we had over 150 people participating. We had 23 different engagements over about 7 months, so it was pretty intense conversations. 76 cities and townships were represented, mostly cities, so we still have some work to do to reach out and get some more input from townships. We had 44 non-community organizations represented. It was exciting to have the watershed organizations participating in these water supply conversations, counties, conservation districts, as you saw. We also had state agencies coming and participating, sharing some information, but also listening to what the conversations are. And so one of the things I was really excited to see is that our state water agency partners are using this information too as they are working on some projects. The Department of Health, for example, is leading a state drinking water plan, and so they're taking some of this input to help shape that state planning approach. That's just one example. So I think the content in the draft Metro Area Water Supply Plan has been really informed by a pretty diverse range of perspectives. So that is what is going to be informing and what we built the draft content that you're going to be looking at in the coming weeks and couple months. So that's where this is coming from. One of the questions as one of the writers on the Metro Area Water Supply Plan that I just want to check in with you about, with our Metro Area Water Supply Advisory Committee about, with others, we want to make sure that this Metro Area Water Supply Plan is in line, aligned with, supported by, supports the water policy plan. And so, for example, one of the early pieces of information that the Metro Area Water Supply Advisory Committee and the Technical Advisory Committee developed were some desired outcomes for water supply. And so these were shared with the water policy plan writing team. And so it kind of informed some of those water policies early on. You have all been talking about the draft water policies. And so I would just pause for a moment and get your thoughts as you consider these goals, desired outcomes for water supply that were developed back in 2022, and you digest those. Do they seem in line with the draft policies and the policy conversations that you've been having? Do you see any gaps, potential conflicts? I'm hoping not. But I'd just like to get your thoughts about that.
Committee members, any feedback at this point? They look very much in line with what we've seen with the plan as a whole in terms of investing in the infrastructure that we have, ensuring that we have good water quality or just water quality in general for the entire plan, and making sure that we are addressing things like contaminants of emerging concern, things of that nature. Yeah, committee members, other thoughts?
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Please.
I think on the water quality, I really, the whole idea of providing a safe water supply to all the community, and with all your outreach that you're doing and convening that you're doing is, letting people know that the water supplies that they're drinking is good, and hopefully, people who are consistently buying bottled water maybe can save some money by knowing and trusting their water supply, a little bit. So I think that that's a big part of it that goes into the water policy, general water policy plan, by also highlighting it here and then highlighting it back in the water policy plan. So what are we doing for our communities and the people in our communities to develop, the trust, be educated, think about things like that. So, if I'm just a person, okay, what's really going on? How does the Met Council get the word out then as well? for all the good things that are being done. Because if you can save some people some money and there's some trust there, then, you know, that's a big help.
Hearing the need for understanding about the water supply systems and this idea of trust in water utilities was one of the messages that really resonated with me, particularly as we think about long-range planning and aging infrastructure. A lot of our water supply systems, especially in our kind of growing suburbs, are not that old yet, but as they age, the maintenance costs needed for that are going to increase. And so wanting to make sure that communities have trust in the value of those investments so that we can have that support for funding them adequately, I think is really an important piece of this.
You may be getting to this, but one of the things that we've heard a fair amount throughout the regional guide, including the water policy plan, is environmental justice considerations, which comes to the forefront when I'm thinking about water quality, and you think about Flint, Michigan, and other examples like that. Is that addressed in the water supply plan?
Thank you for that question. We have touched on that, but I think we're still struggling with how do we want to lean into that. And my Judy on the spot, who's been more tied in with the water policy plan, because that's a really big part of the water policy plan too. But I think your thoughts and your just hearing that that's something we need to make sure shows up in this metro area water supply plan is really helpful. So I'll bring that back to our team as well. If you had anything to add,
Please.
I know this has been a lot of conversation going on between our policy writers and the metro area water supply plan writers.
I mean, not really much to add to that. Judy Sventek, manager of the Water Resources Group. We are working on it. We are looking into, we're taking, comments on it. We're really evaluating what more we can do related to that topic. What I would hope is that when you see all the draft language, which you have seen some of the language in the policy plan, where we're hitting with this area, that you feel comfortable that we've done enough. And I think that'll be critical then to tie it into the water supply plan, part of the plan as well. So I think we're addressing it, we're looking into it, but have we gone far enough? Probably not, but I think we have to take steps to kind of get us to where we need to be too. So.
And internally we do have a team and some staff who are specifically focused on doing an environmental justice review of different policy areas. They have not yet reviewed this draft plan, but my note is reaching out to them and saying, can you focus on this, please?
And that'll be happening probably in the next week too.
Yes.
So.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you. Councilmember Wolf?
Replacement of lead supply pipes is a big part of that, which is ongoing right now. And the educating people that the water is safe and is tested all the time is also a part of that, because if you've come from someplace where the water's not safe, you tend to assume wherever you go that the water's not safe, and so making sure everybody realizes how much we test the water to make sure that it is safe, and that what comes out of the what you buy in a bottle doesn't necessarily go through all of the same stuff that comes out of the tap goes through in the way of testing. I think is an important factor in that, so that people don't waste their money on something in a bottle that they could get much cheaper out of the tap.
Yeah, I use, my home is supplied by St. Paul Water, and they do a fine job, a great job. They are in the process right now of replacing lead pipes within people's homes. I think we're on a list. I think the list is really long, and I think we got a long ways to go before it gets to my home. But just ensuring that the water supply plan is addressing things like that. And the engagement so far has been nothing short of amazing. I'm curious, do you think, thinking about environmental justice, do you think out of all of those gazillions of engagement opportunities and 140, 150 some people, do you feel like the region is representative? You see where I'm going?
I do.
Do you feel like we have a wide representation in those engagement opportunities?
I think we've gotten some really good representation. I think that one of the areas I think we need to do a little bit better, and so this might be a role for council members to play is when you're engaging your communities, or giving us advice on how we can best engage them, is reaching out more to some of our townships and our smaller rural centers. They have some different water supply challenges and different resources available. So I think, and there's a lot of reasons why it's more challenging for them to participate in some of our engagements, less interest maybe in working with council. So that's an area I think we need to make sure we're touching base with. We have some upcoming engagements for the water policy plan scheduled for this month, and so I'm bringing in and another opportunity to hear from more voices. So we're not done engaging, we're continuing, but also through the public comment period, I think we need to continue to make sure we're trying to bring in some more of those voices. I think it's also important to get some of the perspectives from maybe some business owners, property owners, a lot of the people who are engaging us so far. We're all residents, we all drink the water, so we have that covered. But I think there's still some opportunities in some of these communities to get some of those perspectives, just to make sure that their concerns are going to be supported by our regional policy. I think a lot more of that also comes in as we start to think about helping to support local plan implementation and help communities engage their residents, because that's really where the rubber hits the road. That's where, especially for water supply, that's where the work gets done. And so I'm wanting to, get these policies and plans in place so that we're providing resources for that next phase. And I think that's another important place for us to be keeping in mind environmental justice approaches so that implementation is happening effectively. Okay, I'm already jumping ahead to
Sure.
what the next steps are.
Councilmember Wolf?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. One of the things that was asked for early on was kind of a regional message about water issues for cities to send out to their people so that we could all be on the same sheet of music and enforcing or reinforcing the messages that go out, and the council can have a role in that sort of helping to have a consistent message going out.
And that happened?
Well, we're not there yet, but that's the plan.
It will happen. It will happen. Thou shalt make it so.
The other thing I wanted to talk about on the way that we're doing this, it's really revolutionary as far as preparing a plan for the region, because those sub-regional groups are actually helping to draft the content. And when we started talking about this, it was kind of a little nervousness because we weren't really sure, would they show up, would they embrace the work and really want to dig in and partner with us on this? Because in 2010, when we started this whole thing, everybody was terrified that that was the camel's nose under the tent and we were going to be taking over water supply and making it a regional system. But through all of this, we've gotten where they actually trust us and want to work with us and are asking to work with us. And we put them in a room in these convenings that we have and give them the drafts, and they sit and pencil them and work on them to make sure that it really reflects what they think. And like I said, it was a risk at the beginning because we didn't know how much they would buy in, but we've absolutely gotten the buy-in, and it's really improved the council's relationships with the local communities in the process. I wish we could start over and do all of our stuff that way.
But I think
at the very least, we need to be looking at trusting our communities more in the next round and treating them as partners rather than somebody that we tell what to do.
sounds like, I think I heard you say at one of the last meetings that the ideas have really bubbled up from
Yeah, it's
the
a bottom up,
bottom
yeah.
up. You get it, bottled up, bubbled up, water, hey, there you go.
So, Mr. Chair, I just wanted to add one more comment. I think we're doing a lot better job of getting more people involved. I think this next round of engagement that will be starting next week, we have a very, very extensive list of people that has gone out to, whether it's CDs, citizens, interest groups that we are aware of. But also, if there's groups that you want to make sure that we invite to that, it's not too late. So let us know if there's specific groups we can target to try and get to these meetings. We would love to do that and still add them to those meetings.
Excellent.
All right,
Yeah,
so
please.
hearing that this was generally okay, but again, if you have reviewed this later and you have additional thoughts, let us know. So these were some of the goals that our Metro Area Water Supply Advisory Committee, Technical Advisory Committee had crafted back in 2022 and really seeded a lot of our conversations, informed, shaped early thinking about water policies. One of the things that we're doing is it was good to check in with our sub-regional local stakeholders about what they see as success, what kind of outcomes do they want to see in this planning process. And so again, question to you as you consider some of these vision elements, do you feel that they have been reflected in the policy conversations you've had so far? And right, kind of building on what the conversation we just had, we also heard in our sub-regional groups that it's really important we hear the full range of voices heard, a really strong emphasis on clean water, safe water for everyone, adequate supply, and Jen Cater, who has been working with us and taking the lead on the sub-regional engagement, always points out that it's not bountiful, it's just adequate. We really want to also be thinking about efficiency as part of how we think about quantity. Growth is responsible, so there's definite connections beyond just water infrastructure and sources, but thinking about growth, land use development, connected to water supply. The impacts of climate change were raised, noted as important, but I think one thing I kind of observed these conversations was still not sure exactly what to do, and so there may be a area for the council to take sort of a leadership role when it comes to some of the water supply or climate change pieces. Strong emphasis and conversation around protecting source waters, and also an appreciation for having tools and data to support informed decision making. So again, another place that the council has kind of a natural fit. Wanting to continue this collaborative, more proactive, long-range thinking approaches. Being called on to streamline and improve our policy framework. So it's exciting to see we're having a more integrated water approach in our water policy plan and connecting the water supply plan to that policy plan. That's just one example of how we're hoping to improve things. More work needed. We did hear a call from our local stakeholders for increased state and regional support for planning implementation. Including like the water efficiency grants, I think are a really welcome and useful tool. To the point earlier too, we heard from our sub-regional groups that public trust and understanding is going to be something that's really important for us to focus on building to be successful in our planning. And then having some consistency across systems, including that public communication. Are we sending a shared message? So I'm hoping that in the policy conversations you've had in the Environment Committee, you're seeing some of these themes appearing, but if there's anything that we want to make sure you see here that you didn't see in the policy conversations that we want to bring back to our policy friends, welcome ideas, reactions.
Anything to add at this point?
So one thing we also heard, and you'll see this in the draft Metro Area Water Supply Plan in terms of those regional commitments. We did ask our sub-regional partners, what would you like the Met Council to help with? And so these are just kind of high level. They gave us some more specific examples too. But we heard the Met Council having a valuable role in research, technical assistance, financial assistance, convening for governmental collaboration, and that was convening agencies to kind of get some consistency across expectations, also convening the subregions to bring local partners together to have these conversations. And then also looking beyond just the water supply, convening between land use planners, water supply planners, asset managers. There is a role for the council, says our stakeholders, in lobbying, so advocating for increased funding, advocating for some changes to streamline some of the policies, plan requirements. Coordinating messaging, and that would be related to just general education, but there was also some really interesting conversations around that messaging, education, and workforce. So we're really, the water supply sector, like the wastewater sector, is feeling some pressure with workforce challenges, and so how do we kind of advocate for this as a field and keep the people we need in the field. And then also doing demonstration projects. The Met Council manages a lot of land. We have opportunities to demonstrate different things, and so taking advantage of that. And so those are kind of some of the key roles, and so hopefully you will see some of these in the draft content when that comes before you. I think that's all in line with what we're seeing in the policy plan, but if there's...
Is there any, thinking about demonstration, is there any past examples of where we have demonstrated something innovative in this area?
Sure, Mr. Chair, council members. So I will use the Empire wastewater treatment plant as a good example. It's not necessarily water supply, but we did stormwater practices there. We have a green roof there. We have some infiltration basins, a lot of great stormwater practices there to basically make that area a zero discharge of stormwater from that property because it was discharging or potentially discharging to the trout stream. We have worked with partners and provided funding for some of the work at the CHS Stadium. So the innovation of reusing water there as well as Allianz Field and just projects like that we funded over the years.
We provided some funding for the CHN.
Yes. So the
CHS
practices
field.
there where they're taking runoff from the transit building next door and it goes through a filtration system and they
That's right.
are using it to like water their lawns and other non-potable uses.
Great. Yeah. Councilmember Wolf.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A good example of regional cooperation, I think they got money from the legislature to do it, was Burnsville and Savage using quarry water. Instead of it being pumped into the Minnesota River, they use it for their drinking water supply. And that's actually replenished the aquifer below it. It's one of the rare portions of the metro where the aquifer is getting better rather than worse over time.
And there's a sensitive fen right there in Savage too, so very, very critical. Councilmember
Just
Seaver.
to follow up on that, just earlier conversations today with other staff about how do we get more of these stories out. And I think to share amongst communities, but also just to let people know what's going on in the other areas besides transit, which so many of the major communications are on transit. And so how do we get these stories out and get some personal stories out, but because I think there's some really good stories to tell about the programs and kind of toot our own horn on these environmental issues that could also be used by communities outside the metro. So how do we share the information and these projects to other communities across the state as well? So
I love that, and I will toot the horn of a city in my neck of the woods, Circle Pines, and they have Golden Lake. They have been, you're familiar with that example, they've been working with their watershed districts in that area for couple decades, I think, to clean up Golden Lake, which is, I think it was phosphorus, correct me if I'm wrong, that was a real challenge. They've done some really innovative, newish technologies to address that problem, and they are hoping that Golden Lake will be delisted this summer. after, again, 2-3 decades of people working together and collaborating and coming up with the funding and doing some really cool things. So if we're looking for an example, I'm sure there's a lot out there, but my peeps in Circle Pines have been working hard on this for a long time. Yes, please, Councilmember.
Thank you. I just want to echo what the council members earlier said, that to educate some of the communities, especially communities that come from background that they don't have a safe water. We need to engage them more to educate them that the tap water is more safe than what they think, and saving money also, as the councilmember Rolf says. And also, if some of the community organizations that organize with the local communities can be partnered would be great, I think.
And I'm sure if you have specific suggestions on which groups to engage with, say now or talk later on about.
Well, I don't have specific organizations right now, but I know my Somali communities, they don't trust the tap water, including my household. Always they're looking for the bottled water. So, and that's what it comes for, to educate them that the tap water is safe, that's what they think, and it's saving money also. And I will share later on if I get some information about it, maybe organization that will partner with you guys.
And I agree, it's really up to us to share messages and educate people and get the word out about those issues and other things that we're doing. We've done a lot of other demonstration projects over the years that I haven't mentioned today either, that, the intent of those was doing demonstrations so that we could get the word out so others could learn from it and use it. So we just need to keep doing that. So, thank you.
Please.
Building on the people we should be partnering with kind of comment, that was something that really struck me in our conversations. We have our Water Supply Advisory Committee, and it is a very diverse membership because it's important to have the different players together working on planning. So we have state agencies, governments, utilities. In our conversations in the sub-regional engagement, a whole long list of additional people were added, right? If we are going to be successful with water supply planning in our region, it is all hands on deck. And so this list is just a shortened version of the groups of people that were identified. But as we move into implementation, there are many, many opportunities for building these partnerships. So working with the kind of players that we hear about a lot, the counties, the watersheds, but also leveraging federal programs more where we can. The professional organizations really have a big role to play. Academics, landowners, farmers, business owners, all these residents too. And so we got about 300 recommended actions from all of these sub-regional groups, and about 30% of them, people identified Met Council having a role, and 30% of them were just actions that local stakeholders identified for themselves to work on together. And so that's going to be some of the content that you'll see in the draft Metro Area Water Supply Plan. This is not meant to be assigning people roles. It's more to demonstrate the kinds of people that we want to make sure that we're not forgetting about, making sure we're reaching out to and being proactive and engaging. So you'll see a lot of opportunities for partnership and collaboration in the draft Metro Water Supply Plan and the Water Policy Plan. One piece that this is meant to look like, oh, that's not done yet, because we're still working on it. One of the calls from our Water Supply Advisory Committee that very much resonated with me is how are we going to measure progress? And so we have also been having conversations about, we talk about what does success look like at the high level, but what would we pay attention to see if we're getting there? And so some potential performance measures have been proposed. So we've had some conversations, gotten some ideas from our local stakeholders. They've been discussed by our Water Supply Technical Advisory Committee. MOSAC has talked about it a little bit, but we need to go back and continue to think about what are some metrics that might be helpful for us to educate, share messaging across the region, but also to keep ourselves accountable. So that is some content that's being developed. Some things we have some pretty strong agreement on. It would be helpful. The green checks are, yep, that seems like that would be good. Let's work on that. We still need to kind of wrestle with what kind of measures, messages would be helpful related to local water supply infrastructure. There's some security concerns, right? We don't want to put out too much detailed information. But how can we maybe come up with a regional or sub-regional metric that helps us understand the condition of our water supply infrastructure in the region, some of the challenges that we're facing. So some work continues. This month we'll be drafting some possibilities. And we're actually having conversations related to performance measures with some of our research staff internally at the Met Council. So Thrive MSP 2040 had some performance measures. We'd like to update those for Imagine 2050. Look for different ways to track progress in a coordinated way. So some conversations happening kind of across all the policy areas in this idea of measurement. So stay tuned. The types of topics that you'll see talked about in the Metro Area Water Supply Plan run a wide range. So this is just a list of the priority focus areas that our subregions talked about. So you can kind of see that there was some topics that were very commonly discussed. Water quantity and quality, no surprise, were a high priority among almost all the subregions. They talked about them a little bit differently. But then growth and demand was also a topic. Asset management showed up in several of the different subregions. Changing behaviors and norms, that kind of education and trust building showed up in some. Some talked about it really explicitly. Some kind of talked about the need for this changing culture as they talked about other topics. Workforce, funding, climate change. Affordability was not actually proposed as a topic when we first started these conversations. And it was, I believe, the central subregion, Minneapolis, St. Paul, and kind of communities around them, and said, we need to talk about affordability. So you'll see the different subregional chapters touch on kind of this range of topics, but they all tackle it a little bit different, prioritize things a little bit differently. So look for that type of content. And you'll see there's a lot of overlap. This is water supply conversations, but these are all connected to surface water management. There's some wastewater implications as well. So a lot of integrated water concepts in here. And it's going to go fast in the next couple of months. So I think you've seen this timeline before, but just the overall process that we've been following to get to the draft documents that you're going to be seeing in the coming weeks and months is all kind of coming together with that goal of having a draft that you feel comfortable recommending be released for public review in July, August.
Well, it'll go to the Environment Committee in July and then to the full council in August.
So the full process for us to get the water supply plan piece of this out and released for public review is getting the draft reviewed, any revisions needed by our Water Supply Technical Advisory Committee, and then our Metro Area Water Supply Advisory Committee, and having them vote, yes, this is ready to release for public review, and then recommend that the Environment Committee release that Metro Area Water Supply Plan for public review with the water policy plan. And then that would all go out for public review with the rest of Imagine 2050 in August. Did that make sense? I know it's a little
Yeah, so
complicated.
MOSAC will be voting on it.
In July.
In July.
Early July.
Okay, thank you.
And then it will come to the Environment Committee with the rest of the water policy. So thank you in advance for all of the work and the review that you will be giving us. I did want to end with next steps. We do have more engagement ahead. Judy mentioned that we have some workshops scheduled. So if there is anybody that you want to make sure is on the invitation list, or you'd like to forward it or let them know. These are the dates, so April 30th, May 7th, May 16th, and then one virtual information, more of an information session. Oh, and it's been updated May 30th since we had to post this.
And also the other thing I want to mention about these meetings is we'd love it if you would all be able to come to it and attend those, but we also have to be aware of quorum. So when we presented this to the committee of the whole, basically it was suggested that if you're planning or wanting to come to one of these meetings, you let Sam O'Connell and her staff know so that we can just keep track of the members so that we know how many people, so we make sure we don't have a quorum issue.
Good point. I'll be at the Shoreview one. I've let Michael know about that.
Okay, perfect.
Great.
Just make sure I wasn't missing anything.
That's a lot.
Yes, it's been a lot of really great work. It's good to see it come together.
Please, Councilmember Wolf.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Are these meetings ones that you would want business people or township people or any of that at them? Because I think business people could do during the day, but the township people usually have a day job and do their government meetings in the evenings. So if you're wanting to try to get township people together, we might need to plan one that's in an evening, but not Thursday, because it seems like most of the townships meet on Thursdays.
Thank you for that feedback. I know we did plan a morning one and afternoon one, but we did not plan one for the evening, and I know that we have done that in the past because of that very issue, so I can talk to Jen and Steve about that and see if we can get something else.
And those meetings are on the water policy plan as generally. Yeah.
Yeah, and the basic setup is gonna be, there's gonna be a short presentation on the overall water policy plan, the water supply plan part of it, the the sewer plan part of it, and then there'll be breakouts where they're gonna be able to choose where they go to. There's gonna be tables with topic areas or policy areas, so they can look at the draft policy and react to it and provide comments on it, as well as there'll be a table for water supply and a table for the wastewater system plan too, so.
Very good. Well, great work. Thank you very much. More to come. We need to jump back up now that we've got ourselves a quorum.
My apologies, Mr. Chair.
No problem at all. Let's jump on back to some minutes from April 9th, 2024. Motion's been made and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Carries. Nothing on the consent agenda, and we do have one item on our non-consent business agenda, which is a contract, 2024-106, Blue Lake Polymer, contract 23P355A. Welcome to the committee.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, committee members, I'm Trevor Prater, process engineer at Environmental Services and the primary process engineer for the Blue Lake plant. And today here to present to you contract for Polymer 24106 for Polymer for the plant. So just to give kind of a brief overview of what we're purchasing here and what Polymer is, it's derived from oil and natural gas, mostly light naphtha, and it's long chain kind of polymers to help stick sludge together so that we can effectively get the water out of it. It's integral to a lot of our processes, and especially at the Blue Lake plant as well. So we, in order to purchase the most effective polymer, there's kind of different polymers that are most effective for different kinds of sludge and different kinds of dewatering. So we have to go through processes to determine which polymer will work best for us. And at Blue Lake, there are two ways that we use polymer, in the gravity belt thickeners and in centrifuges. As you can see from the pictures here, the polymer is mixed with the sludge before it's fed to the equipment, and then the equipment helps facilitate that dewatering process. So in the gravity belt thickeners, we use those to take the activated sludge from our aeration tanks, those microbes, add the polymer, send it through the gravity belt thickener before we send it to the digesters, so that we don't send kind of watery sludge to the digesters. It's more concentrated, helps the digesters operate effectively. And that takes the sludge from about 1 to 5 to 7% solids. And then the centrifuges, where we use the vast majority of our polymer at the plant, are where we take the sludge that's coming out of those digesters, send it into the centrifuges. It comes in at 2.5% or so, and the centrifuges help take it up to about 20% solids. You can think of the centrifuges kind of like the spin cycle on your washing machine. You want to try and get as much water out of the sludge before you use the dryer and use all the natural gas or biogas to dry it the rest of the way. And you can see kind of a picture of what that dryer does after the centrifuges is make those pellets where we're essentially getting all of the water out of it at that point. So as much water as we can get out in the centrifuges means we can make that process a little more efficient. So in order to get the right polymer for the process and foster competition between bids, we have a two-step procurement process. First, we have polymers pre-qualify. The vendors come in and do bench scale tests to see which polymers might work best for our process, and then move on to full-scale testing with whatever polymers qualify from that process. We carried that out at the end of January into February and tested 5 different polymers from 2 different vendors. We did full-scale testing on our equipment to see which one had the lowest polymer dose and met our qualifications for being able to dewater to our specifications, and had 4 products of the 5 meet those specifications through the process, and invited those as bids. The invitation for bids came out on February 27th. We received 2 bids, one from each of the different vendors, and Polydyne Incorporated had the lowest total cost per dose for that polymer and was selected for the contract. Based on the price that they gave us, we estimate about $750,000 in annual expenditure for the polymer at Blue Lake, with a total 5-year contract of $4,480,000. And the Office of Equity and Equal Opportunity didn't set any MCUP goal for this. So with that, we proposed the action that the Met Council authorize the regional administrator to award and execute contract 23P355A with Polydyne Incorporated to provide polymer to the Blue Lake wastewater treatment plant in an amount not to exceed $4,480,000.
Thank you very much. Questions for Mr. Prater? We went on a tour of the Metro plant. Some of us went on a tour of the Metro plant a week or 2 ago, and it was heavily emphasized the importance of this product at the Metro plant. And we could see the centrifuges there as well and doing their thing. And so, Councilmember Wolf.
Being that polymers are my favorite part of the wastewater treatment process, I will move approval. It's super cool. I used to have a pool and you put the clarifier in there and all the dirt clumps up together and it's just like that. It's cool.
I was wondering how your pool relates to wastewater treatment.
Well, that's why I explained it to you.
There we go. Okay. Motion has been made.
I will second that. Before that, I just wanna, for just curiosity, you say that the end card code was not set. Any reason why?
I'm not sure exactly. There are very few polymer vendors out there, so that would be my guess as to
Because
why.
of their specification there was not enough farmers that can qualify for that kind of contract.
Mr. Jacoby, welcome.
Hi. Mr. Chair, council members, Judy Jacoby, Chief Procurement Officer, and I'll try to answer that question for my colleagues in the Office of Equity and Equal Opportunity. In each and every contract when it's initiated, they look at the directory of businesses and their certifications, and then they all establish a goal based on the number of contractors or suppliers in that area. And so this is a really unique niche, and it would be my assumption, and we can follow up with the Office of Equity and Equal Opportunity to determine if there are any firms in that category to perform the work. But that's typically when you don't see a goal with a very specified good like that, it's because we don't have any companies registered in that specific category.
Thank you.
Yeah. One more really interesting fact, and you did a really good job sharing it, but what I heard from my team is that some really good news with this project is the Blue Lake Polymer bids came in 30% less than the prior price.
Wow.
And so that's really, really good news. And 2 of the 3 wastewater treatment locations that were procured with the new process achieved a reduction in price for polymer, and the 3rd stayed the same. But it just really emphasizes the good work of staff trying new things and looking at the market and implementing a process that is successful for the council as well.
That's great news. We don't hear that too often.
Yeah.
The motion has been made and it has been seconded. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed nay. Carries. Thank you very much. All right, and that takes us to our last information item for the afternoon, which is about fog. One of my favorite topics.
So another fun favorite.
Have you watched the video yet?
Oh,
It's
yeah.
super interesting. I watched it.
I watched the video.
Fats, oils, and greases.
Yes. Mr. Chair, committee members, thank you for having us here today. We were here about a year ago when we launched the FOG Task Force to update you on our endeavor, and here we are almost a year later. We're back. FOG Task Force happened, and we wanted to report to you on the outcome and the success of this. My name is Tina Nelson. I'm the manager of the Industrial Waste and Pollution Prevention section in the Environmental Services Division. I am here, my co-presenter today is Angie Peterson. She was a member of the task force, and she is our our fats, oils, grease, and rigs program coordinator. So it's a mouthful, sorry. All right, so to begin with today, I was gonna talk to you a little bit about FOG, what it is and why it's such a problem for Met Council and our community partners. Angie is gonna talk about the participants of the task force and our meetings and what we heard from them when they shared their experiences with us and how we could assist them. She's also going to show you some outcomes and deliverables, including a toolkit and a website that we have developed that is now deployed so that communities, businesses, and residents have some resources for FOG. And then I'll wrap up with some potential next steps before we take your questions and hear what feedback you have. All right, so FOG is an acronym. It stands for fats, oils, and grease. And when we talk about FOG, we're talking about the kinds of fats, oils, and grease that originate from animals and vegetables, the kinds that we cook our food with every day. So fat does not belong in wastewater. And when it is discharged down into the sewer, it begins to build up on the walls of pipes. So over time, that buildup will get great enough and can eventually cause a blockage. So all wastewater with fog in it should be routed through a properly sized grease interceptor. So the grease interceptor's purpose is to cool that wastewater down so that the fats, oils, and greases can float to the top and any solids can settle out. When you have a grease interceptor, you also have to maintain it on a regular basis for it to work properly. So over the past 5 years, we have seen an increase in the amount of fog that we have in our collection system, and that makes it to our wastewater treatment plants. And we are not alone. Our customer communities also are having similar experiences. Many of these communities have been able to develop a dedicated fog program, but the majority of them just simply do not have the resources or funding to do that themselves. So we launched the task force so that we could listen to them and figure out how we could best assist them and focus on controlling fog at the source so that it doesn't make it to the sewer. And source control is always the most cost-effective way to deal with any pollutant. I'll pass it off to Angie.
The task force was comprised of representatives from several metro communities, some that have established fog control programs and others that do not. We also had representation from the food service industry and from industries who manage fats, oils, and grease in different ways. These participants represented a wide variety of perspectives that helped us identify how we can help them and reduce fog in our sewers. The task force met 4 times from April to June. During these meetings, we listened and identified the ways that we can support the communities and businesses. Communities with well-resourced programs were able to share best management practices and city code that supported their authority to enforce the installation of grease trap interceptors. The engaging discussion and information sharing led to the development of many tools and resources that are now a part of our fog toolkit. We now have a fog website, which is where all of our toolkit items are housed. The resounding message we heard from our participants that the best way to support our communities and businesses was to develop a toolkit for outreach and education. Obviously, we need to inform people why fog is a problem and how they can prevent it. So the first thing that we did was create an educational video. Hopefully you guys were able to watch that. And this was geared towards kitchen staff to educate the staff on why fog is a problem and how to manage that in the kitchen. We also have a list of best management practices and a no grease poster. I brought an example. You can each have one if you want. But this way they can print this out and put it over any drains that are in their kitchen that are not connected to a grease interceptor. Just to remind everybody that grease should not be going down that drain. There's also a log sheet for maintaining the interceptor and a list of permitted haulers. All the haulers that we permit, we asked if they wanted to be listed as a grease trap servicer. So we did designate them on our listing that we already have out. We are also still working on materials in other languages. We know that that's needed, and I'm still working on that. And I'm also working on stuff that's geared towards residents and not just targeting the food service industry, but we've definitely heard from communities that residents need to get this message as well.
Right, so like Angie said, we're continuing to develop more resources for that toolkit, working on ways to expand our education and outreach, especially in schools, so we can target kids while they're young and instill good practices in them. And then, like Angie said, also developing materials in multiple languages so that we really can promote fog control across our diverse region. During these task force meetings, the members did express that they were interested in Met Council moving forward and considering a regional strategy to keep fog out of the sewer and to promote its collection and beneficial reuse. So later this year, we will begin to plan for a second larger task force with broader representation across the metro to help develop some regional strategies that will really help us control fog throughout the region. And finally, we are still looking to find ways, how could we secure grant funding? This funding could help communities without a dedicated fog program build and resource one. And also, they could use the money to help businesses who need funds to put in a properly sized grease interceptor to make go. So before we take your questions and comments, I wanted to point out that we had many expert staff that really worked hard behind the scenes. We called them our fog delivery team. And long before we executed our first meeting, so many hours were spent planning and making sure that everything went off without a hitch. A few of them were able to be here with us today, other than Angie. So we have Carl and Mar, and then also Andrew Viatros, he was our project manager. And so I just wanted to make sure, that they got some great recognition. They were present at all of our meetings. They sat with our members, they led discussions, and they listened to them. And they've all been very active in helping Angie create the toolkit and the resources for the broader community. So yes, so thank you all. Great effort. It takes a big team, and their hard work and passion for this subject really made sure that this task force was a huge success. All right, so thank you for allowing us to update you. Angie and I can take any questions that you may have.
Great, thanks. I have one question, but
Go ahead.
I was just wondering, maybe this is for the second task force, but model ordinances for cities to consider. Is that something that the first task force took a look at, or not so much?
We did, Mr. Chair, committee members, excuse me. We did not touch on ordinances in the first task force. The message that we heard was that they would like there to be an ordinance or some language from us that all the cities can refer to so that everybody is getting the same message. Especially the restaurants indicated that this would be helpful because they have restaurants that operate in different cities and they have different regulations in different cities, different oversight, different enforcement. And so if we had an ordinance model that everybody could work from, then that consistency would be helpful for them.
Thank you. Councilmember Cedarburg.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is just a maybe wastewater treatment question. Do you have data that shows where your hotspots are so you can target engagement?
Mr. Chair and committee members, typically we don't have data, we just hear about it, either from a community that is having a blockage, or perhaps our interceptor services business unit crews are out in our collection system. Angie spends half of her time chasing fog problems or rag problems. So she's been working really hard on writing letters to communities, especially rags. She's developed a letter for long-term care facilities. We've worked with communications to get it out to, I don't know if there's trade associations for long-term care facilities, but just to kind of get the message out that, rags don't belong in the sewers either. We've got really gross pictures of what they do to our equipment.
So you're kind of tracking, so there's a new industry that kind of has come up with more built that's not having problems and
Yes, do you have any
collecting
comments?
data.
Mr. Chair, committee members, I do track the issues, but they are all over the place.
Okay.
Sometimes it's rags, sometimes it's fog. So far it's kind of all over the place, and I don't know what the history is. I just came into this position a few months ago, and so the issues or the hotspots that there may have been in the past, I'm not really familiar with. And each city kind of has their own little hotspot. So I would say that, yeah, I'm sure there's several of them out there. Some related to industry and some related to residents. So it's really varied quite a bit.
So that's, just to follow up, that's where your toolkit is going to be really important to get to the cities and communities and businesses that they can then just take and then use that. They can be the downstream educator as well. Yeah. Okay.
Exactly.
Councilmember Wolf.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to give a little history, we had, I can't remember if it was before or after you guys came on, but there was a big fog berg that broke the Egan plant.
Yeah.
And then we had the creamery in Hastings that almost made us violate our permit. So it is a big deal, and it's certainly easier to keep it out before it starts. But I think even in a lot of households, you know, I grew up, my mom always had a can that she put the grease in, and so I always do that. I don't think young people are taught that anymore a lot of times.
Until they pay the bill.
Yeah.
To get it cleaned up.
And well, and this, the flushable wipes.
I will say, I live in the country now, and I have my own septic system. I think about grease a lot more than I did when I lived in Monterey, so. And I could just run hot water. So.
One of the things that was mentioned in the task force was trying to get this messaging into schools to catch future generations, to catch them early, and then hope that they would bring that message home with them, like so many children do, and then tell their parents that they're not supposed to do that.
Councilmember Wolf.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My mom lives in one of those old people communities in Arizona, and I think every single public restroom has a sign, don't put adult diapers or wipes down the toilet or you'll clog it. Maybe we need to go around and do that around here in some places.
Sounds like it. Fascinating. Thank you. Thank those of you in the audience who have worked on this. It is such a critical issue. And, you know, we often say that the council is a good convener. Here you go. Here's an example of it. Convening in action and more to come. So thanks again.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right. And that takes us to the end of our agenda where we have our general manager's report.
I have a fun thing today.
Yay.
I'd like to introduce you to Travis Newman. He's joined us for this afternoon. He's a researcher and a PhD student at the University of Nevada. And we connected to Travis when some of our staff saw a presentation he gave at WEFTEC, Water Environment Federation. And they were just blown away by it. So when they got back to the office, they began busily working to see if we could get him to come to Minnesota to help us honor Earth Day and learn new ways of thinking about protecting our Earth. So he's given 2 presentations to staff in the last couple of days. His presentation title, I think, says a lot: Indigenous Environmental Practices, Lessons from the Past. It's a very deep and refreshing look at that whole intersection of our values, our shared future, and our natural systems rely on, of course, with our planning. Everything you've heard about today intersects with that as well. So a lot of positive comments from staff. We've heard things like, wow, I wish I would have learned this history earlier in my career. I would have likely made some different choices. Another person said, this is a great new lens for me to see the work that I do here differently. And the Earth and our responsibility is clear to me thanks to the way Travis talks about our relationship to it. So that's a good segue for me to talk about my reaction. I especially appreciated his metaphor, if I can use that term to it, of the human body with the Earth, and the human blood to the human body, let me back up, and water to the Earth. That as humans, in that context, we can survive if we lose a little blood, but if we lose too much, there's no future, right? And so water is life. You've heard me say that many times. And ultimately, what does that mean? Water should unite us, not divide us, right? And that's how we're convening and doing all the work the way we're doing it, is we need to unite about the things that are important to us. And water is one of them, but it's not the only thing. But certainly uniting will help. I do have a gift for Travis, and then hopefully you can say a few words. First, a couple of things just to remind you of us, which is it's a little button that says, "We are on Dakota land." And the other's our business card because it has our vision of clean water for future generations.
Coincidence?
And this, I believe, is sage. You could probably tell us more about the practice that that's used for, but I know it's an important sacred practice. So thank you very much for your time. We appreciate it.
And Councilmember Wolf had
Do we
a
get
thought?
the presentation?
Yeah, that's what I was just gonna ask.
Did you videotape it, or maybe you could summarize your two presentations in a couple of minutes for us? And right on cue, it started raining water like crazy, so someone's listening.
I connected the spiritual stories with the history, with the tribal ecological knowledge, and our application of technology and what we need to do. And talking about climate change, I'll kind of put it like this to give you a short understanding of it. In that metaphor of blood is water, you have to understand the earth's processes, the chemical processes, the physical processes. They try to maintain balance at all times, because it's the same processes going on within our body. It's the same chemistry going on with our body. And the feedback loops are relatively the same. And what I was trying to explain is how the application of our technology is what's wrong. And as an example, water is life. What is a dam? It is a tourniquet. When applied temporarily, a tourniquet is very useful. But when put on permanently, everything downstream dies. It's not the dam that's the problem. It's the relationship to it. And many of these infrastructures were put in before we were even allowed to say what our story is, or it to even be tested through a scientific process. So we barely had the right to pray until 1979. And it's trying to bring us all together as far as perspective, stepping back, and how to apply our technologies, how to apply our knowledge properly, and how to interface with each other. As far as sage, I'll explain what it's used for. And crystals or salts are used in the same way. Think of sweat for your body. It inundates your clothes. And if you don't wash it every now and then, it gets a little too much, doesn't it? Now think of your spirit doing the same thing to all of your things. All of your clothes, your house, everything. If you don't clean it every now and then, or say that maybe there was anger or pain, it can affect you in ways you don't understand. And this is kind of a medium when it gets turned into smoke, and it's a medicine that we were taught to use to do that. And that's what the sage is. That's why you usually clean out a place before you start interacting with it. Because we know spirituality has consequences. We don't know how yet. That's why it's called the Great Mystery. We were just given the teachings of what relationship could be applied to it, whether that's prayer, whether that's meditation, or understanding every single word out of your mouth has a consequence. So, stepping back and taking perspective, hopefully we can apply these technologies in a way in like how you're supposed to have a relationship with your body. Take into account all of the processes that are going on with the system and the checks and balances. It's not just carbon. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for coming to Minnesota, sharing your lived experiences and your knowledge on this critical topic for our entire world. Appreciate it.
We didn't answer your question about getting to, I don't know if there's a recording of the left tip version. But
Yeah,
we had some technology challenges. We were doing virtual and in person. So we didn't actually get a recorded session to share. So we'll have to think about that, but it's really good.
I have the PowerPoint, you have my contact information, so you might want to take a look at it and then I can answer what that is. Because yeah, the technological issues kind of messed up the recording.
Thanks again. Thank you. Anything else? Very good. We are adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.